Hey guys, I know you were expecting to hear an episode of Little Things today, but I am super excited to introduce you to a podcast called Taboo Talk. Now, you may know that about a year and a half ago or so, Pastor Mike came out with a book called Taboo, in which he explores a lot of the subjects that Christians don't necessarily always talk about. In Taboo Talk, Pastor Mike and I take some of these subjects and we explore them just a little bit deeper. So in this first episode, we talk about the tension between Christianity and the world. It can be sort of hard to figure out, should we be watching this movie or listening to this kind of music? Is there a danger to it? Can we sometimes take part in things that the world takes part in? How do we know? So we have this conversation, and I think it might be beneficial for you. Enjoy.
Well, hey everyone, welcome to Taboo Talk. It's me, Pastor Mike, here with Amber Albee Swenson, and we're diving into some uncomfortable, necessary, urgent, anxiety-inducing questions.
Do you know that is pretty much the thing I like most about you and also dislike most about you?
Oh, in that order? Or?
You love being vulnerable, but you get me in the most uncomfortable conversations. No one else.
Oh, well, I didn't know I made you feel that way. You're welcome, / I'm sorry. / let's dive in. So, Amber, today I want to talk to you about this really complicated interaction between people who follow Jesus and people who don't. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure a lot of people listening have been on one side or the other side, or maybe both sides of that dynamic. So I'm thinking when, you're not a Christian, you're not a church person, and the church people you know are not. It's not just that they believe different things, it's that they're just not good or nice or
loving.
Yeah, it feels condescending and exclusive, and not just because your beliefs are different, just the way they carry themselves. It feels like a superior, holier than thou kind of attitude. For other people, they do this really well. They manage to love God and hold on to the teachings of Jesus and love the people, no matter what they believe and how they behave. Mm-hmm. Other people kind of get a little bit squishy when it comes to the teachings of Jesus, and they want to kind of blend in and fit in with their friends or family who aren't Christians, and so they do things maybe that Jesus wouldn't like. So this interaction between, we might say, Christians in the world, or followers of Jesus and not followers of Jesus, it's a really complex thing that plays out in all kinds of ways. Mm-hmm. What friends do we have? Do we send our kids to a public school, or do we homeschool them or send them to a Christian school? What kind of entertainment do we watch? Do we listen to only Christian music, a certain kind of Christian music? We only see shows and movies on PureFlix because we would never have Netflix. Mm-hmm. So I think it gets down to like the gritty of the kind of entertainment we choose, kind of relationships we have, the kind of people who sit at our dinner table, what people think of us if we're followers of Jesus, if they're not just yet. So this is the heart of what I want to talk to you about today.
I love it.
Yeah. And it kind of comes out of, I think you shared with me this passage where the night before Jesus died, he's saying this prayer where he's talking to his Heavenly Father about the people who are following him. And he has this prayer that's essentially, God, I don't want you to take them out of the world. I want them to be right in the middle of humanity in the world. But Jesus also prays, I don't want them to be of the world, right? Because I'm not of the world, I'm of God. So kind of the kernel that we want to revolve this conversation around, how can Christians be in the world, but not of the world? Mm-hmm. So let me start with this. When you were a teenager, when you're in high school, when you're in college, you were raised in a Christian home, is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you're a follower of Jesus. How well do you think that you held this tension of being like in the middle of the world, not avoiding it because it's messy, but not like assimilating or imitating it?
Yeah.
So in but not of, what letter grade would you give 19-year-old Amber?
Oh, 19. Oh, no. Let's start at 18.
No.
18-year-old Amber read her Bible from front to back. She was at the top of her game. 19-year-old Amber went to college and was not. So, and I would actually say some of that was being in the world and wanting to be in the world. Being away from home and sort of, when you don't have the temptations, it's pretty easy not to fall into them. But when you get into a different environment, what do you do, even as a Christian? And it's so easy to think, I can go to this party and nothing's going to go bad, or I can go out with this person and it will be okay, and whatever. And so I think 19, 20, and 21-year-old me did not get a good letter grade, probably did not pass very well. But 18-year-old did, so if that counts for anything. Are we averaging?
We can do whatever you want. We're making up the rubric and the grading scale. Yeah, tell me more about that. I'm curious, kind of looking back, what did you do? What was your intention? I'm sure you probably didn't go in thinking,
No.
I'm going to dishonor Jesus.
No.
But I think a lot of us get to that spot. So how did you get there and what happened?
Yeah, so I started dating a guy who was using drugs and alcohol pretty heavily.
Yeah.
And I fell in love and it broke my heart. And part of that too was just getting in that whole headspace. So I was listening to Stone Temple Pilots, Gin Blossoms, Toad the Wet Sprocket. I'm like,
it's bringing back memories here.
hardcore hopelessness, drive around this town. There's nothing here. Like, we're just hopeless. What do we got going for us? Might as well get high, might as well drink. And it messed with my head big time. I mean, from a girl who read her Bible and was like so into it, and to like a shift to, this is all there is. And I mean, I was messed up mentally for quite a while, just like in bad ways. And I think that music really can do a lot to your emotions. It goes straight to your heart. And so for my kids, I'm like, I'm not against. There's some Christian music I don't like, actually, and actually that messes with my head as much. For King and Country and Michael W. Smith have a remake of "Place in This World," and I remember exactly where I was in 1991. I remember what was going on in my life, and it wasn't good. That was a time in my life when I was very confused about the future and what I was doing, and it was the beginning of like anorexia and just like a whole bunch of things. And so the interesting thing is, when the remake came out and I heard that song, I instantly was back in 1991. And I was like, that is not a good song for me to listen to, even if it's a Christian song by Christian artists, because it can and I have done the same thing. I went to a Gin Blossoms concert like 3 years ago.
Oh. Full circle?
One of my friends knew that we went to them the first time back in like 90 whatever.
Yeah.
And I was there and I was like, this isn't good for me.
Wow.
What it does to my headspace right now.
Yeah.
As trying to be a Christian in the world, I can't go back there because I am not in a good place and I did not make good decisions there. So that's not good for me.
So I hear you saying you were in the world dating this guy. And this guy had maybe a worldly way of thinking, worldly entertainment. And not only did you, step alongside him and represent Jesus, but just slowly it got into your head and into
Very
your heart
much so.
and kind of changed that confidence and hope that you found in Jesus.
Yeah, and even after the relationship ended, I took that from him. So I took the music and went back with me. And so, and again, so many people, I think part of this whole thing is self-awareness. What works for you doesn't work for me.
That's good.
You might not be able to watch Netflix. I might be able to watch Netflix because we struggle with different sins.
Sure.
For me, a big part of my spiritual maturity is realizing I have to really think about what goes into my head.
Yeah.
And what is the message that's being played.
Yes.
I've struggled a lot with, not feeling valuable or feeling worthless or not good enough and all that. So I really have to worry about, is this song speaking to me in a way that lifts me up to honor God and to know who I am? Or is this, even if it's a Christian song, putting me back in a place where I was like hopeless?
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate that you say that, because in this discussion of in but not of, it's actually really easy to start adding rules to the Bible.
Yeah, no.
And I think Christians have done that. How can you dress? What can you listen to? What's the pastor or church approved list of movies and songs and shows that we can watch, which often comes from a good spot.
Right.
We don't want to compromise our faith, but it ends up being pharisaical, legalistic.
Correct.
That we end up with this long list of rules, just like the Pharisees had, that aren't totally true. Yeah, I think when I'm that age, when I'm 16, when I'm 18, I went to a public school, and I did some amazing friends, but I think I was the truth guy at the expense of love. So I much more leaned into, I'm reading my Bible. This is what's right, my mom actually passed on some high school papers, and I wrote the most cringy paper about how America was this founded on Christian values. And it was just so, I read it and like, I cannot believe I wrote to my like non-Christian language arts teacher, this like bomb drop. I took every like controversial issue and just like, boom, dropping Bible passages on it. So I was not going to be of the world. And I made it so clear. And in the process, I was not humble or gentle or meek like Jesus was. So I think for me, it was a little bit of stepping away. If I'm never near those people, I can't do those things. I still, to this day, I'm conflicted. So a lot of my friends started drinking, some of them smoking pot, like middle of high school. And I just totally separated. Not that I didn't like them, but I remember I'd play roller hockey in my garage every Friday and Saturday night by myself. I put up a boombox, turn on the radio, and just skate around in my driveway and hang out with my mom and dad.
And maybe that's what you needed to do, to not get pulled into that at that age. I don't know.
Maybe. I still...
I mean, I don't know either. And I see what you're saying. I think the idea is to be in the world and not be judgmental and making a bunch of rules, but being loving, whether or not you do the same thing. Someone told me once, don't get mad at the people who sin differently than you do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, okay, they're smoking pot. Maybe that's not a temptation to me.
Sure.
But I struggle with other sins that are equally damning. So, you know, and I think we have to be very careful in this tension to not say, well, Mike, you should have been out with your friends who were smoking pot and drinking. Maybe not.
It's tough.
Maybe not. And maybe you weren't mature enough spiritually to stand your ground. I see this all the time. I wasn't the only one. I wasn't the only girl who dated someone who wasn't in their faith and tried to save somebody. I see this of girls, teenage girls, godly girls all the time, who fall in love with a guy and they are going to save them spiritually, you know? And that is not an evangelism tactic in the Bible.
It's missionary dating.
No, it is not. And you can get sucked into it. And so while you could say, yeah, but look at these 8 people who they brought their spouse to know the Lord. Great. I'm glad it worked for them. It's not a one size fits all. And it's not, you know, everybody's got their own deals they're going with, and we just have to, you have to know yourself.
That's a great application. In the small group Bible study that I'm a part of, we often use the phrase, who's influencing who? So if I can get close to these friends and be a good influence, my light is shining, and they're, wow, that's like, you're really a kind, forgiving person. Like, go all in. But you could put those same people in the same room, and if the influence, the non-Christian influence is coming, I'm starting to talk, think, behave, believe like that, then it becomes a really dangerous thing. So to me, that's the heart of the tension. There's not black and white, here's where you can go, here's what you can do, but how you're being influenced and how you end up thinking, believing, behaving at the end of that is vitally important.
I agree. And when I worked in the nursing home too, I was very astounded because I had been in church circles mostly. And going to the nursing home and seeing how biblically illiterate people were. I mean, completely. And I love to be part of, you know, I want to talk to them and love on them and that type of thing. But I also drew the line when I, you know, would come up to the desk and they're having a conversation about, you know, illicit sex or something. I would just turn right around and, you know, like, I'm not going to be part of that.
Sure.
I want to love you, and I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I'm getting to know you, but that is not a conversation I'm going to be part of, you know.
That's a great example. And I think we're getting to the heart of the discussion, where if someone doesn't follow Jesus, they're not going to be doing the things of Jesus, because that's what followers of Jesus do. But to influence and love and be connected to other people, we have to get close enough that their beliefs and behavior will come out of them.
Correct.
So how do we hold that tension where I don't want to be shocked or like so offended, oh, this non-Christian is not acting like a Christian.
Right.
Well, of course they're not. They're not even trying to be a Christian.
Right.
So how can we not let that be like, well, you're gossiping or you're saying things I don't agree with, So I'm not going to be part of this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can kind of see it both ways.
It's an interesting thing, though. I remember the example I just gave, it happened. There were 2 teenage girls talking about sex at the desk. There was an older gentleman. I came up. I heard what was going on. I left. He stood up and walked away, too.
Oh, wow.
And he followed me. And he said, that wasn't a good conversation for me to be part of. And and this is not a believer. This is someone who's very much in the world, but recognize that even as an older gentleman with minors, this was not a good conversation for him.
Sure.
So I think I understand the tension, but I think to draw a line in the sand is okay. Like I work well with you, and I will go and help you in that room, and I will ask you about things. Yeah. But when you're talking about something that is offensive to me or whatever, I'm not going to take part in that. And just me turning around, it tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah. I like that. I think if you step away and a person potentially feels judged, I think it's so important to step back in with an intentional act of love. If you step away, they might come to the conclusion, oh, you think you're better than us, or you don't care about. So I think you got to almost like when you have to confront a fellow Christian, you got to work 10 times as hard after the confrontation to let them know, I'm not anti-you. Like, I care about this relationship. I care about you as a person. I'm not just like, I'm up here and you're down here.
I'm not better than you. We've all sinned sexually. I mean,
Exactly.
Jesus said anybody who has lusted after anybody has sinned. I mean,
Yes.
I'm not any better than anybody else.
Yes.
I'm just also not going to, gloat about sinning sexually or whatever.
That's good. Can I ask you a personal question?
You always do.
I do. So I grew up listening to and loving Metallica.
Yeah.
Hard rock.
I'm trying hard not to judge you right now.
And to this day, like when I used to run marathons, the first song on my list was a song by Metallica. It just gets me jacked up and so excited. Actually, last week I put it on for my kids, and I'm just like shamelessly rocking out like in the house.
Yeah.
And I think about that where there's some lyrics in Metallica that aren't like biblically out of Jesus. I don't think that music influences me to be violent or degrading or not love Jesus. To me, there's just something about like some music. I wrestled with this a ton with hip hop music. I grew up and had every rap CD of Snoop and Dr. Dre and Tupac and Biggie. Like I had that big old CD case where that was all I listened to for years. And then I'm like, oh, is this okay? And I literally smashed all my CDs in my garage when I was in high school. And I went and I bought them back. I'm like, that was an extreme reaction to like.
Right.
And so I've always kind of held that tension with, when it comes to the media that we use, shows that we watch. You had said before, I don't want to impose rules. If we can honestly say, I'm not imitating the sins that I'm seeing here. Some of it I find entertaining. Some of it's just a good to know about culture. Some of it can be a good teaching thing as I'm watching with my kids and pause and say, hey, kids, what do you think about this?
That's perfect.
So, how do you, to what, it's a spectrum, I suppose, but how much do we engage with a movie like Wicked, a show like Glee or Game of Thrones, or hip hop music that's out there? Right now, as we're recording this, there's a big beef between Drake and Kendrick Lamar that became all the rage at the Super Bowl. So it's not exactly kind, forgiving. Kendrick says, be humble, but he arrogantly just eviscerates another human being in front of 133.5 million viewers.
Right.
So how do you, as a parent, as a person, like find your spot on that spectrum where you're not minimizing sin, but you're not like a nun who's escaped to a convent that I'm going to have no contact with current American culture?
One of my daughters just broke up with her favorite musician. Yep. So she loved this musician, played him all the time at her house. And it wasn't me. I didn't know the lyrics at all. But another one of my children came to her and said, that's not like glorifying God at all. Like you probably should think twice about that. And it took her a couple weeks or whatever, and she came and she said, I'm breaking up with him. I'm not going to listen
I haven't heard that before.
to his music anymore. One of the things that I tell my kids all the time, when they were young and they would start fighting, I would turn on Christian music. I'm like, Holy Spirit, come into our house.
We need you right
I'm
now.
like, are you inviting the Holy Spirit in, or are you creating an environment that he won't be part of just because he can't be part of sin? everybody's going to have to do things differently, because you can't, like you said, you can't get away from every TV show that, you know, and I like to do what you do. We watch TV shows with our kids and we're like, okay, that was not a great choice, or why was that not a great choice, or
Sure.
did you hear that?
Yeah.
And I just think it's very personal for families
Yeah.
to figure out what their line in the sand is.
Yep.
You know, Steve and I, for a long time, we would not watch rated R movies. That doesn't seem to matter anymore. Is streaming, you know, they're not always rated, and
Sure. Yeah.
it doesn't seem to matter.
Yeah.
Because there's violence and there's, you know, sex and in everything. And Jesus' name is used as a curse word all the time. So you have to kind of figure out.
Yeah. You know what even complicates this more for me is the Bible is full of sex and violence.
Oh, for sure.
So sometimes there'll be something in a show, but the point of the show, I think of Breaking Bad is one of my favorite TV series ever. And, you know, it's filled with violence and drug use and drug selling and drug culture. But the point of the show is meant to be like the slow spiral of how it's almost like the Proverbs of like where sin will lead you from one thing to another. So sometimes Christians say, well, there is violence in that, so I can't watch it. And I think it's a little bit too black and white to think, but what's the overall message?
Right.
And then, this is really surprising to me, in Acts chapter 17, when Paul goes to Athens and he sees all the idolatry, number one, it deeply grieves him. So he has not compromised his faith of saying, well, I guess I'll believe in all these gods because they do. But when he engages with the Athenians, he is literally quoting pagan, non-Christian poets.
Correct.
So he has enough familiarity with their art, with their culture, with their philosophies, that he can find hey, it's like one of your poets said. And he doesn't say, and this is why your poets are all godless and pagan and stupid. He actually says, you know what your poet said here was actually true. In God we live, we move, and we have our being. And so to me, that really helps. Okay, I want to be really careful about not adding these rules.
Absolutely.
Of saying no non-Christian media. No, but Paul knew it. We can have media that teaches us things. As a parent, it can be awesome instead of like isolating your kids and then pushing them out the door and saying, good luck. So a little bit of that exposure with good Christian discipleship.
I think it's so important to know yourself and to know your children, because it would not be good to lead your children into sin by something that you are showing them on TV or by music that you are having at home.
That's good.
And it's so easy to pass down generational sins. So let's just assume that I curse all the time and I listen to music that curses all the time. So that's just normal to them.
Yep.
It's so easy because we're so blind to our own sins.
That's good.
And so you want to be pretty cognizant of the fact that what you play and what's normal in your home is going to be normal to your children.
Yeah.
And they're going to go out and they're going to represent Christ. So is this what our normal is going to be? Hey, as long as it's funny, it's funny, it's so funny, but it's so filthy. You know, I'm thinking of like Seinfeld, you know, it is hilarious, but there is so much, you know, that
you don't want to be numb to it. You don't want to be calloused.
I don't want to be. And I want to make sure that my kids understand, because if they see it playing in my house and then they go to their unbelieving friend's house, and, you know, it's like, yeah, we're all listening to, we're all watching the same thing. We're all the same, you know, and instead of, well, maybe this isn't normal.
I like that point a lot of your awareness. This might not be like a black and white wrong thing for me, but being cognizant of the people around me. That's a good discussion when it comes to drinking. The Bible doesn't forbid drinking, but is this an example that's going to lead someone else into temptation? And in that case, I would use my freedom, like the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 8, 9, and 10, for the good of my neighbor.
Right.
So that's a really fair point where maybe I watch this and I'm not provoked to anger or violence, or maybe someone can listen to the 90s music without hopelessness and despair. But just, you know, having an awareness, whether it's your children or your friends, to know it's not just about you and your rights and your freedom. It's really about how do I best love my neighbor? And that's not an American question to ask.
No.
We tend to, well, show me it's wrong. I have the right to do this. When Paul, who was all about our freedom in Christ, actually bound himself to his love for neighbor. So it's that's a dynamic not a lot of us think enough about.
I'd also say too that my kids went to Christian day school their younger years and then public high school. And so there have been so many non-Christians around our table in the last few years. And a lot of them have started studying the Bible. But I have loved having them in our house.
Yeah.
I've loved. I remember we were sitting out on the deck one day, and one of my son's friends climbed up the deck. Ours is on a second story, like it doesn't have steps. He climbed up, sat down. Hey, Swensons, how you doing tonight? You know, and like I just love, and half of my son's friends have my name in their phone under get out of jail free card. Like they one night when they were over at our house, they were talking about something, oh, I might end up in jail. I'm like, all right, listen, I don't care how you get there, call me. Okay, I'll figure it out.
Nice.
And months later, I was saying something to one of them like, oh, I wanted to text you, but I don't have your number. And he's like, I have your number. And I'm like, oh, how did you get my number? Get out of jail free. I'm like, oh, wow. I love that.
Wow.
I love being in the Word and in the world.
Yes.
And being a family where everyone's welcome. Bring whoever you're hanging out with. And I don't care that they're Christian or not Christian. I don't care if they've ever been to a church or if they were, one time. I want to be the family that they're like, that mom's cool, and I will go because she gives us pizza and whatever. Not the family that's like, well, over here, we only, listen to this, and we only do this, and if you aren't going to do this, you can't be here.
Yes.
That's not who I want to be at all.
Wow, that is beautiful. And I have a hunch that if those kind of kids who maybe don't follow Jesus yet want to come to your home, you're probably doing this really well. Because if you were standoffish and arrogant and holier than thou, they wouldn't be like, yeah, let's go to her house again. I love feeling judged and excluded. So that's probably a really good sign. Do people who don't follow Jesus just yet invite you? Mm-hmm. Jesus was invited to Matthew, the tax collector's house.
Yeah.
He was called, I love this line, he was called the friend of sinners.
Right.
So even people who said, oh, those aren't like God's kind of people just yet. Like Jesus was not ashamed to rub shoulders with them, break bread with them. Not because he was soft on truth, but because he was bringing all that love.
And maybe that is probably the best part of me not being a goody two-shoes in college is that I get it. Like, you did it. Yeah, me too. Like,
right? Yep.
I've been there. I understand. I'm not going to throw any stones.
Yeah.
And so God uses the messes to help you to have empathy for people who are still in the mess.
Yep. That's beautiful. Yeah. So big picture, we're talking about the tension of, do you go? Do you not go? Do you be friends? Do you not be friends? Do you listen? Do you not listen? Do you watch? Do you not watch? And some of the big things are, let's not compromise a single word that Jesus said. Let's reach out in love and not isolate ourselves. Let's think about who's influencing who. How can we be a good example for people who don't know Jesus just yet? How can we not be proud, but instead like, oh, your sin might not be my sin, but I'm still a sinner. So I'm not thinking that I'm the good one in the room and you're the bad one. And maybe if we can wrap up, why don't we let Jesus get the last word?
Sounds great.
Yeah, so this is what some people call the high priestly prayer, Thursday night, right before Jesus dies on a Friday. And he says this: Father, I'm coming to you now, but I say these things while I am still in the world, so that my disciples may have the full measure of my joy within them. I've given them your word, and the world has hated them, for they are not of the world any more than I am of the world. My prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one. They're not of the world, even as I am not of it. Sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, I have sent them into the world. Beautiful balance, huh?
Very.
Jesus, who literally is holier than thou and me and us. He didn't keep his distance. He came in. Full of grace and truth, never compromised. He died for us, saved us, and now he says, go. Go into all the world, make disciples. They'll know you're my disciples by the way that you love each other. And don't forget, sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. Man, if God can help us do that, it's going to be a good season for the church.
Totally agree. Beautiful.
Awesome. Well, thanks, everyone. You got a lot to think about. We certainly love to hear kind of what you're wrestling with, the experiences you've had. So make sure you drop a comment. We'll catch you next time here on Taboo Talks as we dive into more uncomfortable topics that are maybe good for our souls.